How's it going?
It's a bad way to start the video. Knees hurting.
Today we're looking at this lovely little clipper. He's still running a Pierburg. The Pierburg has been bodged by somebody to keep the car running. I've been saying for ages about doing a Pierburg 101 video. Now's the time. We're going to diagnose from start to stop everything wrong with the Pierburg lorry. Pickup truck. So we're going to diagnose from start to stop everything that's wrong with the Pierburg. We're going to fix it. We're going to set the carburetor up, and then we're going to take the car for a spin in a bit. The reason for that is the car also has no brakes. None of this matters. We're doing a Pierburg video. Come on, let's get going. Far and away, one of the #1 causes of problems with Pierburgs is the flange. I get where Volkswagen were going with this. If you use a piece of aluminium, because the exhaust manifold sits directly under the carb, it's going to heat soak through the carburetor and evaporate all the fuel. So they came up with this system of having a rubber mounting flange. That's fine. The only trouble is they split. What does grate on me is that people will replace this when they're doing a Weber conversion and then still continue to blame the Pierburg like it was the Pierburg's fault. You may not actually be fixing anything by putting a Weber on there. Just saying. I'm not anti-Weber, but just a heads up, try this first. Change this guy and see. How do we find out if that's a problem? Dead easy. Give me a minute, I'm gonna get something flammable. Right, I've got a bottle of brake cleaner. I'm gonna set this to kill instead of stun. A bit more. Right, start the engine. First things first, the idle's high because I set it high because the engine was struggling to start. And then you just... Oh. You hear that? So as the brake cleaner is finding its way into wherever that's pulling air in, the engine speed's dipping. And it will slowly speed back up again as that clears. Yep. Hear that? And then it will come back up again. Right. I'm going to turn it off. So what's happening? Chances are on your car, if it's started to struggle ticking over, what you'll probably find on yours is when you spray the brake cleaner in, because the mixture's set up to not have an air leak, you've got more air coming in. It's kind of like opening the throttle, but the car's running lean. So when you spray brake cleaner in, it basically gives it extra fuel, which compensates for the extra air. The engine speed picks up. Now, just to get this fella home, I increased the mixture. We needed loads of parts. We knew the car was coming in for work anyway. So I increased the mixture and turned the idle speed up a skosh, just to help him out. The thing with that is, now that it's running at the correct mixture for the amount of air getting into the engine, when you add brake cleaner, it basically partly floods the engine, so the engine speed will slow down. What you're listening for is a change in engine speed, because you might have bought a car with an existing problem that somebody's tweaked to get around the issue. If it dips and comes back up, you know that it's probably been compensated for. Maybe there's some funny business or somebody just didn't know what they were doing. If it increases, it is probably a fairly recent issue. This one increased massively when I met the car. Carburetor flange. I'm pretty much 110%. One of the things I've spotted immediately is we're missing the bracket that supports the airbox. Well, that allows the carburetor to weeble wobble. Again, that would be a problem on a Weber or a Pierburg. So you snap that clip back there, pop this vacuum line off, the rear one on the airbox. We're gonna have to undo this. Normally this is on a slip clip, but it's aftermarket, that's fine. Give me a minute. Tools required, fairly small actually, just a 10mm. Get yourself an extension just in case. Flathead screwdriver. I would take this hose off at the valve cover if I was you, because it will give you more space. Pull him off. There we go. That's the airbox up and out of the way. Obviously, if you've got the bracket there, there's a 10mm you need to undo as well. Right, we've got the plastic type wax stat, which actually looks in fairly good order. We have a coolant hose here. Yeah, look, you can see the weeble wobble. So to disconnect the throttle cable, we go down the left side of the carb, and then that'll allow you to pull the throttle cable through. And a quick fart. There we go. If you pull your cable out, you can then lift the grommet out of the way. Put that somewhere where it's not going to short out on the battery or the back of the alternator. Ask me how I know. We've got some crystallised coolant knocking about there, so that could be a sign of a small leak. That's rooted on there. I'm seeing some blue silicone vac hose, so someone's took a crack at it. Hopefully it's just a simple case of poor routing. There we go. There would be a lot more coolant on yours if it wasn't for the fact that this was already low on coolant. Don't have a panic attack, I didn't run the car for hours. Disconnect, this is a vacuum reservoir. You might find yours is a big green sphere. For some reason this one has that. Makes no odds. Disconnect that from the top of the choke pull down unit. Some of them have this thermo switch here. Unplug that. Coolant line here. So the complete lack of coolant says to me that our wax stat probably hasn't been able to operate. This Jubilee can be a bit of a pain in the ass. I would recommend cracking the Jubilee clip itself loose while the carb's bolted down, but then leave it alone until you are able to lift the carb. Disconnect the two electrical connectors back here. So there's one with a chamfer and one that's just a block. This one goes to your idle control valve. This one goes to the heater on the thermo time valve. There's an electrical connector back here for the choke, for a little heater that's built in. I think we're nearly there. It doesn't take all that long to disconnect a Pierburg. Ah yes, this has had some aftermarket earth treatment, so we're going to need to undo this Phillips screw just to take the earth strap off. You do need the earth strap or the carburetor won't operate. I recommend doing all this stuff while the carb's still bolted down because it gives you some leverage. There we go. Someone's been smart about that, and just from the factory, yes, it's bolted down, but it's got a spade connector on the valve cover, so you can just unplug it. Safe to say, 30 years later, they tend to fall to bits. Okay, fuel line off. Oh, good. Love it when a Jubilee clip doesn't do its job. Thanks for that, your little job's worth. Great. All right, I'm going to take it off at the swirl pot. I don't fancy having an argument with that right now. Is that Jubilee clip shagged as well? Seriously? Lovely. Right, not holding out much hope for a reunion gig for that Jubilee clip. I think his career's over. That should be clipped down. That's a vacuum leak waiting to happen. That is manifold vacuum, in fact. Okay, everything's disconnected that needs to be disconnected. Our coolant line will move, that's good. Those 310 mils there. These don't need to be done up stupidly tight. People always seem to really crunch them down. I think the manual says 10 Newton meters, but even that's too little. Like, you know, be sensible. Nip them up. One of those nip them up type fit-in type beats. So as you can see, there's nothing here to really panic about. Our bolts are in good condition. Yes, those are reusable, unlike these gloves. Back one can be a bit fiddly. Not ridiculously fiddly, but they don't always come all the way out of the carburetor, but you just slide the carb over and out she comes. Job's a good one. Right, we're disconnected from everything apart from our wax stat pipe, so let's just pull on that gently. Lovely, yeah, there's no coolant at all there. Now, believe it or not, that's it. There we go. One Pierburg. One bonnet hook straight to the head. All right, time to remove the carb flange. Again, just 10 mils. Oh, well, that was completely loose. As was that one. Well, that ain't gonna have helped much, is it? The flange definitely needs replacing. Even if it hasn't completely split yet, it will. Looking at the fatigue there. Again, this is not a Pierburg problem. Volkswagen are the ones that thought this up. There are Pierburgs out there with solid mounts. In fact, Volkswagen didn't always do it this way. On the T25, which also has a 2E2, Volkswagen bolted it straight to the intake manifold. So I don't get it personally. The execution leaves a little to be desired. Keep hold of these guys, they double as a washer. Obviously it goes without saying, try not to drop any bolts down the intake manifold. There we go. Right, bingo. Monster air leak there. There are two types of Pierburg 2E2 base that can be fitted to these cars. I'll be honest with you, it seems like luck of the draw as to which one you get in the box. These ones are encased entirely in rubber. Now the problem with that is when they let go, there's nothing you can do about it. In fact, you can see all the old fuel looks squeezing up. Yeah, that's stale petrol. Fuel is coming past and it's actually eating the rubber. So this might be quite an old carb flange. While you're there, worth looking around in here because you can get cracking inside the throat, and that means that it's gone through this ridge here. I personally prefer the steel-based ones. Your mileage may vary. What I like about these, you can change this seal if you need to. As long as it doesn't split through here, you're fine. Not the prettiest bit of moulding work in the world, but you see this deep ridge. That's why you don't have to crush the carburetor down, because it's got a nice big fat built-in seal. This one's compressed slightly. Sadly, if this was the type that had the O-ring built in, chances are we'd have been able to change that and go again. But alas, 'twas not to be. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason that Pierburgs get thrown in the bin. 90% of the carburetors I see normally need slight adjustments, maybe a clean, and a new flange. Cool. Oh, it feels nice to be doing a Pierburg again. So preliminary checks. Yes, somebody did blast a load of silicone around the airbox. I still can't work out why they did that, but I actually supplied this replacement clip and a new airbox. We've removed this long lad. Just, let's get this out of the way now. How do the vacuum lines go? I'm just gonna check this isn't total dog shit. No, somebody seemed to know what they were doing. That's all connected up correctly. Very nice. Right, we take the long one off first. That says to me that that vacuum line doesn't fit. You shouldn't need a cable tie there. Okay, so our vacuum lines look like they're connected reasonably well. That shouldn't be like that. This is the idle speed screw. You do not adjust the idle speed there. Let me talk you through the process of how a Pierburg physically works, okay? From the very get-go. This is a full and in-depth explanation of how the Pierburg works. It's going to get a bit technical, but trust me, I'm going to try my best to just explain it as simply as I can. That's not in a patronising way. They are, as a piece of machinery, fairly complex. But break them down into smaller jobs, and all of a sudden everything becomes quite simple. This plate's been adjusted, and it shouldn't be. I'll explain why in a second. Engine off. You'll see this plunger is all the way out. Anytime this is not getting vacuum, the plunger is all the way out. This is called a 3-point unit, also known as a 3-4-point unit, because they did one for air conditioning cars that had an idle boost. We're not going there. The same rule applies to both of them. You just have an extra step. This, believe it or not, is actually our idle speed screw. So how does this really, really weird looking thing work? Long story short, this bolt here is adjusted from the factory, and then they snap the head off. You can still get a pair of grips on it and wind it in, which we're going to need to do because someone's pissed about with it. But when that's wound in the engine off position, the throttle should be open to cold 2000 RPM. I'll explain how to set that up in the setup section. You want 2000 RPM. You start the engine, and as the engine builds vacuum, this rod will pull back in after 10 seconds. The way that works, our carburetor is continuously supplying loads of vacuum to the 3-point unit. The carburetor wants to suck this rod all the way back to the housing, right up against the housing. And we control various circumstances with the carburetor by leaking off a certain amount of vacuum and preventing it from doing that. You'll notice it tees off and goes to this little black circle here. This is the Thermo time valve. This is the #1 cause of people suffering with a really fast idle, i.e. 3000 RPM when the engine's hot. These two fellas here work in tandem. This is the Thermo time valve. This is the overrun cutoff solenoid. And they work together, hence how, if you look, this is fresh air. Filtered fresh air, granted, but this is fresh air into the secondary. They're both connected, you see that? When you flick the ignition on, you'll hear this guy click. That's the sound of it opening. So that leaks some vacuum off. This guy works in a slightly different way. It's a diaphragm. And as it heats up, it closes the vacuum port. So when you start your engine, these guys are both leaking vacuum. This rod's all the way out. There's a heater in here that should heat this up as quickly as possible. We don't obviously want to peg our idle speed at 2000 RPM for too long. When that closes, this rod will pull back. Our thermotime valve's now shut. His job is done. His job's done right at the very start. This is closed until the engine gets cold enough again. When the rod pulls back, the throttle swings down, trying to close in the hot idle position, but you'll notice a gap because it can't. That's because we have a thing called a wax stat here. You adjust this with that bolt there. You adjust this when it's doing its job. Not before, not after, you won't get anywhere. The wax stat has a little pin that pushes out, and you see the way the throttle's trying to shut? That's what gets you from your 12 to 1400 RPM cold idle down to your hot idle speed. So as the wax stat closes the throttle, it will come to rest on this pin, which will be back about here in the idle position. At the point that the engine's hot and you want to adjust your idle speed, you want to adjust this 13 mil. If you wind it in clockwise, the plunger will come out further, speeding the idle up. If you wind it anti-clockwise, the plunger will retract, slowing the idle down. When the engine is above 1200 RPM, a relay in the fuse box closes this solenoid. And you will notice as soon as it does that, this rod will be pulled right the way back hard up against this housing. The reason for that is if you then decide at cruising speeds, you take your foot off the throttle is able to be closed completely. It's a fuel saving measure. And it also does this when you turn the ignition off. This clicks shut, sucks the rod all the way back in, which also allows the throttle to slam shut. The reason for that is it stops the carburetor dumping fuel and causing a running on condition. The reason the rod then comes back out again is because all the vacuum has bled off from the carburetor and the rod's able to come back to the start position, and the whole process begins again the next time you start the engine. So the reason this clicks is when the ignition's off, this solenoid's closed. When the ignition's on, this solenoid's open until it gets told to close. At the same time that that's going on, so that's idle speed. So now, how do we handle cold idle mixture with a choke, the same as any other carburetor? This is much simpler than everybody makes it out to be, and very seldom is this the problem. You've got a choke flap, it's attached to a spring, and that spring contracts when it's cold and expands when it's hot. When it contracts, it closes the choke. You'll notice even while we've been chatting, this is closed. Hot coolant is fed through here and into our wax stat because they both work on hot coolant. We also have a heater that heats up that spring to help the choke to open quicker for emissions. You can get by without that heater, but you'll be on choke for a little longer. If you need to get your daily up and running, you can just slightly tweak this choke open, and 9 times out of 10, you'll be home free. There is also a thing called a choke pull down unit. This thing here, these very seldom break, but for some reason, again, inexplicably, they get blamed for everything. When you rev the engine, the sudden change in vacuum draw, this diaphragm will suck a rod backwards. And if I can get a screwdriver in, I can show you, and it will kick the choke open like that. Now that's to stop bogging and over rich conditions from cold. Again, once your choke's open, he has very little work to do. You're not going to believe this. That is the entire highly complicated cold start setup on a Pierburg carburetor. It looks so much worse than it actually is. So to just refresh, first flick of the key, rod's all the way out, 2000 RPM. Thermo time valve closes, this retracts and drops the idle down. This pin can't go all the way closed yet because our wax stat is working. As the wax stat heats up and the pin expands, the throttle closes gradually until it comes to rest in the correct idle position with the rod protruding approximately halfway out. When you rev the engine above 1200 RPM or you're cruising at 1200 RPM, this rod will suck all the way back in if the 3-point unit's doing its job because this solenoid's closed. That will then stop excess fuel on the overrun, increase fuel economy, emissions, all that stuff. And then below 1200 RPM, it will pop back out. You'll hear this click and you'll watch the rod protrude again. You're then back at idle. If you turn the ignition off, this closes briefly while the engine's spinning down and still generating some vacuum. It sucks the rod back in, cutting off fuel, stopping the engine from running on. And then as the vacuum all dissipates, this rod will come back out on its own, ready for the next startup procedure. Choke, spring, water, heat, opens on its own. Literally, it's just like having a dude in the engine bay pushing your choke cable in. They're really not that bad. So this apparently mess of vacuum lines on the back makes sense when you actually break it down. Vacuum is coming out of this port, trying to close this. It can't because it's bleeding off to the TTV. These are all color coded. The brown ring, there's the brown, brown, and brown here. Blue is fresh air. Think of it as fresh air. That's where it vents to. So that vents to fresh air, and this is discolored. That used to be blue. This solenoid here vents to fresh air too. So there's the blue circuit. There's our brown circuit. Yellow circuit literally just allows the solenoid here to do its job. It's a single line. Okay, so take a good look at that because that's how they're connected. Main vacuum, vent, vent, overrun cut off, vent. This one here goes to the airbox. And then this is the last one here. This line here is for your vacuum operated secondary. The thing that makes a Pierburg drive really, really nice. So your engine decides when to open this secondary. So you boot it, and only when the engine decides that it wants it, can the secondary open. And that gives you nice smooth acceleration. It also means that your engine doesn't bog down and you don't waste a ridiculous amount of fuel. As for our front vacuum line routing, there's one there, look, that needs blanking off. It's used for certain applications, but not always. This guy's doing a big dirty piss on my bench, so I need to clean that up. You've got a single line, comes out of the bottom of the carb, just under what's called a part throttle heater, goes into the bottom of the choke pull down unit, and then this one goes off to the vacuum reservoir. That's it. I'm pleased to say this ain't looking too bad. I do need to clean that pooey water up though. Right, these are fairly easy to drain actually. Get yourself a paint pot lid or whatever. That's about what they hold. This here is a vent for the float chamber. The good news is, if you get ready, you can just flip the whole thing up, drain the worst of the fuel out. You're still gonna get some fuel. These things do happen. Removing this clip is as simple as pulling one side out and then pulling the other side out. Happy days. To take the top of the carburetor off, you just need to disconnect the vent. Everything from there down is connected to the bottom of the carb. So we're good on that front. And then you need to just disconnect the choke pull down unit. Ouch! There we go. It looks like the choke is connected to the top and bottom halves, but it isn't. It's just this coolant line here that is connected. Let me just get something to take that off. If you're dealing with the factory clips, which that looks like it's one of them, get a ratchet. Trust me, they're a pain in the ass. They've got a Phillips head on them and it is useless. Oh, he's not been off for a while. Is that overspray on the coolant hose? Fine. You may need to take the Jubilee clip all the way off. Oh, God, that is rooted. That's not happening. Right, once you've got sufficiently pissed off with that Jubilee clip, you may need to just get some grips and crack the bond loose. As long as you're gentle, you won't hurt this. We're not crushing or yanking. We're just gonna grip the hose and gently rotate it to break the bond. There it goes. Happy days. As you can see, we haven't marred the hose whatsoever. That should now pull off. There we go. Apologies if there's a lot of huffing and puffing. I've got something going on my chest at the moment. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, get the top half of the carb off. Pro tip, if these haven't been off for a while, get another screwdriver and tap into the head and you'll find it. You don't struth. What the f is that? That's the worst fastener I've ever seen. All right, so you've got 2 long ones and 2 short ones. All right, that's much more like it. So the long fasteners go on the go to the choke side of the carb. The shorter ones go over to the left. Someone's pre-mullered this one, which is awesome. Thankfully, they also didn't crunch it down with a impact driver, which is nice. Yeah, that's a little bit gammy. I'm going to see if I've got a spare of those. That's it. You should be able to lift. There you go. Done. Lift him directly upwards. Wow. All right. Oh, he's in great condition. Look at that. I don't know what the hell that clag was down in the first one, but considering how shitty that looks up there, look, flip it up. We're all right. This should be a breeze. Why did I say that? Okay, we have our gasket here. Now, this looks in great condition. We have a problem though. I'm not trying to shill, okay? In fact, come to think of it, I don't have any in stock at the moment, other than the one I'm gonna use for this carb. I actually get custom gaskets made for these Pierburgs because the ones you can buy in the aftermarket tend to be too thin. They refer to it as a cover gasket and it's not, because there are all these drillings here that need to seal perfectly. If you get vacuum leaks through there, you'll have running problems. Additionally, it needs to seal, or the vacuum of the engine is able to suck fuel out of the float chamber, believe it or not. Right, we'll be as ginger as we can because we want to double check that everybody's happy. I normally use a Stanley knife blade and just very carefully get underneath the gasket. We don't want to cut this off. We're trying to just break the bond between the carburetor housing and the gasket. We're not scraping away at the surface. Believe me, you don't want to be trying to reface this. There we go. We've already got a little tear just there, look. Could have happened on its own during removal, could have been an ongoing issue. We need to remember, someone's been fiddling with this, so there must have been an issue. Additionally, something I want to make sure I make absolutely clear, if you don't have to adjust anything, say for example your throttle response is really good and you've just got an idle problem, leave all of the secondary stuff alone. Don't adjust anything that doesn't need adjusting. If you start fiddling, you'll soon tie yourself in a knot, and then you'll get frustrated, and then you'll put a Weber on it. We're skating across between the gasket and the carb. Okay, and away we go. Gasket for carburetor has been removed. Right, down inside the float bowl, I'm no stranger to seeing a load of gack built up in here, but this one looks great, in excellent condition. A1, I would say. If someone sent me this as a parts carb, it would be getting rebuilt and sold as a complete carburetor, because look how happy it is. We can check our accelerator pump operation. If you tip the float bowl towards the accelerator pump diaphragm, which is down in the front there, and just press. There we go. See him spraying? There we go. Now to dry up all that petrol. This also exposes a bit more of the working guff for the wax stat. So there's a pin in here which pushes on this rod, as explained a second ago. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep repeating myself, but obviously I'm showing you how things work. So it pushes, that pivots, and allows the throttle to close in that direction. In fact, the time has come to take the wax stat off. Please tell me that they haven't ruined these screws. Oh, good. Great! I'm gonna get a spanner, back in a minute. And this is one of the reasons I use these retro screwdrivers. If you can find any at a car boot sale, this was given to me by my dad many years ago, and it's been through the wars. I've since gone and found a few more. They're like 20p at boot sales. They're so handy, because also, I mean, any screwdriver will do it, but these ones always seem to have this square shank on them, which means you can establish that in the head of the screw. You can use your hand on the screwdriver to press down, and then the spanner gives you your torque. Upsettingly, because I'm trying to film, I can't position it in quite the right way. That's one. Oh, I hate pre-rounded screws. Come on. Come on. Yeah, it's camming out big style. All right, this top one, you can get pliers on it. And just pop it loose like that. The bottom one's much more difficult. Your mileage is just gonna vary. I can't account for what someone's done to your Pierburg, unfortunately. Right. Wax stat screw. You want the wax stat to start trying to push itself out like that. Excellent, that's a good sign. That pin pushes on this plunger. See how that works? That needs to go with the slot vertical. There we go. Time to deal with our wax stat. Now, I made a video a very long time ago on how to rejuvenate these. It's also how you test them. All right, I'm gonna go and boil the kettle and see if this guy works. I'm starting to wonder if they had a wax stat problem and that's what led to them disabling everything else. I'll be back. All right, any of you who've seen the original wax stat video will know exactly where this is going. Just submerge it, you haven't got to go crazy. Right, watch the pin. Oh, he works. That's good, because these are quite hard to find. Notice how it's protruding out now. Leave that to eat for a minute. It's quite a dense wax pellet, so it takes a little while for the heat to fully soak through. We want it to protrude, then we fit it back up. That's all we're looking for. If these are blown, they very often don't come out at all, and you'll see evidence of wax leaking around the edge of that pellet. I'm going to say that's a pass. Excellent. Again, leave it a little while longer. The reason I'm not panicking about protrusion measurements is there are actually a few different figures. All we're looking for is that this comes out when it's hot. All right, doofus that I am, I didn't actually get a video of me testing the 3-point unit. It's dead straightforward, and I'm not really showing you anything by showing you how to test it. It's really simple. You block off the yellow port, and it has to be sealed tight. Connect a vacuum tester up, or a way of drawing good amount of vacuum, to the brown port. The rod should pull in. If the rod pulls in slightly and starts to come back on itself, that's actually livable, because all that does is mean that your overrun cut-off position doesn't hang on for as long. Really not the end of the world. Why am I saying that when we're talking about doing this properly? Because these 3-point units are becoming nigh on impossible to get hold of now. I have 2 dead ones down here, and I'm seriously considering looking at remanufacturing them, because you just can't get them anymore. Anyway, like I say, nice work, idiot. Good effort. So now we need to test our Thermo time valve, and because I'm an idiot, I didn't bring a screwdriver with me. Go back. Something important that I just forgot to mention: if you're pulling vacuum on this rod and nothing happens, it's dead. Throw it away. It's done. They can't be fixed, annoyingly. They're peened over at the factory to make a seal. There is actually, I forget his name, I'll have to, please Kyle put it in the captions. There's a fella looking into the possibility of remanufacturing these, now I think about it, on YouTube. Looks really interesting. He's looking at peeling the front housing away and replacing the diaphragm. I don't know how he got on with that, but I watched the first video and it was fascinating. Really, really respect that level of remanufacturing. That's how we keep these cars on the road. But yeah, if it's drawing back and coming back on itself as you're pumping vacuum, that's actually all right, because you've got to think the engine's going to give you consistent, strong vacuum. So it will pull back to the idle position and work perfectly. I daily drove a car with the overrun cut-off stage missing for probably 9 years. Never once had a problem. It was fine. So if it doesn't pull right back in, don't throw it in the bin. As long as you're getting draw, it will work on the idle circuit. But if the rod doesn't move at all, it's done, sadly. Right, TTV. This feller, that fella just there, he's got these 2 cat's ass washers. You can just pop off with a screwdriver. Try not to lose them. Although in a pinch, you can actually super glue the TTV to the bracket, and it will be none the wiser. Just trying to help you guys keep your cars on the road, what can I say? Yeah, so we've got a spring washer and a cat's ass washer, clip type thing. And invariably this bracket's bent, because they for some reason always are. Where is my pliers? You just want to grab the bracket, gentle twist, and withdraw. It's like bayonet practice. There we go. Cool. This is a highly scientific process. Make sure you have all the appropriate equipment at home. This one needs a little calibration. In the freezer for 15-20 minutes. When you remove it, you can slice it down into, you want probably 5 centimeter thick slices, and that will serve a party of 6. Cheese. This isn't my freezer. There it is. Deeply scientific part of the process number 2. Now he's been in the cold, just want to blow through the brown port. We're getting air. Now this, you're going to have to get the Milwaukee one, I'm afraid. There's no other quality one. So 800 quid. It does have a radio built into it though. As you can hear, the reception's not very good. What do you want from me? Do you have any idea? I'm talking to myself in an empty building in the cold. Is this entertaining for you? Really bothers me when Pierburg get a bad rap because they were so innovative. They were so forward thinking that they built a coffee break into their carburetors. I'm very grateful to them for that. Boiling water, you can already see bubbles. That's a good sign. That means the diaphragm's closing up. Cheers, buddy. Do well. Over 15 degrees Celsius, this should be closed. That's hot. Yeah. Don't drink the TTV water. And that's all it takes to test the TTV. Now, if we want to be super cautious, back in the frizzer, which I like to do. I like to test them twice, just to make sure. That might be the first time that's ever actually done its job. It's been a minute, but we're back. Just had some other sort of more urgent projects that I needed to jump on. Right, so where were we? We tested the TTV, everybody's happy. The wax stat, as you can see, is retracted on its own. It is freezing in here, which is cool. It's going to be perfect actually while we run our cold start procedure. I've done the core plugs on the Golf now, so we're good to go back together. Just final check of those, all happy. Another check of our float. I think I went through how to do this, but we're all good. You'll notice the choke is completely closed. I'll bet you we end up doing something about that. When these springs get to a certain age, you tend to find that they over choke a little bit as the engine wears in with just its years. When you put the top half of the carb together, this tube, if you look at you see the outline here? That corresponds to this outline here. This tube needs to go down in this little well. So the front is at the front. They more or less self-center. You shouldn't need to ever force a Pierburg back together. I'll bring it around here. Obviously, when I'm not trying to explain to the camera, I can pretty much put one of these back together with my eyes closed, but you guys are here, so naturally I look like I'm all fingers and thumbs. Lovely. Happy days. There we go. And the long screws go towards the choke housing. Short ones go on this side. Obviously a Philippe Fallope. Now just run these down for now, don't go mental. You want to just get the head just contacting. You see the way that assembly started to move? Now come over to this one. Cross pattern. No, these gaskets aren't a crap fit, by the way, that's factory. Never understood why they leave so much gasket protruding, but they do, so there we are. Literally just running these down. I bet you if I grab that hard enough, I could probably back it out by hand. Bring them up to tension, just until you feel resistance. They won't all be the same. As the housing settles differently. This front one, for some reason, often needs extra tweaks. So the reason I actually got these thicker gaskets made was so they had some squish. Because as the housing comes down, basically the gasket's able to rebound slightly. Because the gasket's able to rebound slightly, it takes up some of the tension. Also, if you find you do have leaks, fuel leaks or air leaks, either one, you can just nip these up a bit more. So that should be it. We'll leave it like that until we're on the car. Everybody's clean enough. Like I say, this is a driver carburetor, it's not a museum piece. So now we need to put our TTV back in. So those pegs there just pop through the bracket, like so. And then you've got your spring washers. 1 and 2. And then what I call cat's arse washers, for obvious reasons. I think I've seen that mentioned on forums elsewhere as well. So you can just start these out by pressing them down, like so, like that. And then get a socket, smallish, I believe that size, that's the one. And then you ain't got to go crazy, just handle of a screwdriver, something like that. Lay this over the clip. Same again on this one. They sometimes need a bit of help. Again, it's not like you're putting this back onto a chassis and it needs to hold up the weight of the car. Happy days. Solid enough for the job. Our 3-point unit housing goes there. We're going to use this to our advantage. We'll wind this screw back in a second. We'll fit this up first. Obviously our overrun cut-off solenoid goes on the bracket too, but what you do, just so that you're not all fingers and thumbs trying to fit this thing up, you get the first screw for the bracket and fit this guy first. Not tight, just so that it's on there on its own, and then you haven't got to keep manipulating it to try and get everything to stay still. Line your holes up. Do you know, times like this I actually wish I was left-handed because the camera angle would be much better and you could see what I'm doing. Apologies, I'm trying. Right, it's better than the original Pierburg video, folks. Come on, you got to give me that at least. Okay, we're well underway now. So before we fit our overrun cut-off solenoid, a little tip for you. This port becomes a pain in the ass to try and get to with this guy in situ. So fit this line first. You want resistance when you push these on. To check the secondaries working, all you have to do is raise the ram, put your thumb over the end, and it holds. Let go. Happy days. He can clip back on here. Done. You want this hose to be quite short. There you go. Nice gentle curve, no kinks. Now we can fit our overrun cut-off solenoid. Okay, leave your overrun cut-off solenoid loose, and then you can push your back line on, and he goes round to there. Job is your good one. Again, you don't need to crush any of these screws down. You just want to tighten them enough that the vibration won't loosen them off. We want to just blow through this. This port here can get a little bit gummed up with clag if it's been in an ultrasonic. Just blow through. Happy days. Right, that's clear. I do enjoy building Pierburgs. He goes on there. Brown line at the TTV first. And then the brown line on the 3-point unit second. There we go. That's happy. You want a nice gentle curve on this. No kinks. Just make sure everybody is gentle curves. None of that. All right? Because obviously it's under vacuum, so it will suck itself shut. That massive port there goes to our airbox. The blue line, terminating at Watford. I don't know if that's true. Railway guys, let me know in the comments. Farm boy, was I right? So there's our vent connected. That is it. That's the rear hose set on a 2E2. This feller goes down onto that line. Now, before we do that, we want to put our pot throttle heater in. He's the little screw, if you're getting confused as to what fasteners go where. There's a notch in the housing, goes into that protrusion just there. I'm all fingers and thumbs because I'm trying to show you guys what I'm doing, by the way. There's nothing wrong on my hands, I promise. Well, that I know of. There might be. I've been playing guitar for 25 years and I'm still no good, so there might be something wrong on my hands. Let's connect this hose first. You don't have to do it in this order, by the way. These are just things I've sussed out as being quite simple. Now we've got our lolloping great vacuum leak here. So I'm going to make a blank with this port. Not a crap shout if it's completely unused to just solder it shut because you never need it. And invariably, it's the one that leaks that you can't see. So you end up going hunting for it. I do have some blanking plugs here. However, it's whether you've got one that's the right size. This needs to be tight. I see this all the time where people will use a bolt. The trouble with using a bolt, the threads themselves cause a leak. If you want to use a bolt or a screw type beat, nothing wrong with that. Make sure you're using the shank of the bolt that doesn't have any thread on it, because then you've got yourself a metal plug. Take an offcut of some silicone hose. I do have blanks, as you can see in the background, but these have become very inflexible the longer they've been in the pack, and I would rather make sure this is reliable. It's hidden under the leading edge of the carburetor. You aren't going to see it. This is not a bodge. We're sealing the vacuum off. The more tension you put the hose under, the tighter it's going to be, the tighter it's going to stay. Cool. There we go. Right, we ain't finished yet, although this will fail. This step is not mandatory. It's something I would advise you to do. First things first, get some gloves, because this stuff stinks. Right, this is not a reversible step, so be absolutely certain you want to do this. This stuff's water weld. It's fuel resistant chemical metal that you mix up. So you need a piece around until it goes grey-ish. It's like a light grey. It really, really reeks, this stuff. Just thumb a little bit in, like that. There we go. Right, that's thin enough where if you need this back, you can drill it out. It's only maybe 1 millimetre deep. Pop that ball there, leave everything alone. Now we add our vacuum blank. Why have I done that? Because if this hose ever perishes, your vacuum leak comes back. This is the blank. This protects everything. It's just, you're just doubling up on things, all right? Never hurts to be conscientious. The reason I've left that ball there is we can now confirm that set without fiddling with it. So, you can go over there for a minute, actually. Our wax stat's going in. Remember, we need to keep this slot vertical. I always put just a dab. Don't go mad. I just put like the finest dab of assembly lubricant. It's cold in here, so this stuff's like treacle right now. Come on. And get it in the groove on there as well, because it stops everything from snagging. Just give it a wipe on all the surfaces. It just means that this guy's never going to get caught and you're never going to get stuck with a high idle speed. It's a fairly relaxed fit, but you know, we're being conscientious here. And then yeah, if you look, lovely. Right, wax stat is going on. If you have concerns about your wax stat not turning the idle speed down, you can rejuvenate it as shown earlier, and while it's hot and sticking out, you can just run it on then. Just take your time, run it down evenly, nip and nip. There we go. Don't crush these screws down for Christ's sake, because they're already a pain in the ass to get out as it is. Last thing you want to be doing is rounding them out. Okay, we Philippe. Throttle bracket steady on. Throttle cable bracket going in. Just need the one screw to get yourself established. Now you're probably thinking, why did I put this on first and not do the vacuum blank second? Because this bracket is a surprising pain in the arse as far as being able to properly see that port. So it's good to just do that first. The bracket just slides in underneath, like so, as you can see. Done. We're nearly done. Now before we go any further, all of this gets a nice healthy coat of spray grease. I think the original Pierburg manual actually calls for WD-40 or the like, but I like something a little more permanent personally. Get it in all the nooks and crannies, everything that moves. Especially focus on the wiper for the accelerator pump. A little bit on the nose of there. Just make sure everything under here that moves is lubricated sufficiently. The idea is that you're preventing problems from arising before they become an issue. We've got some more surfaces up here that want some grease. You won't hurt it. There we go. Okay, choke pull down is functioning correctly, look. Now I like to just get some grease up in there too. The fastest way to kill one of these chokes is to starve it of lubricant. Just grease in here, in the nooks and crannies. There we go. It's brand new. Right, the next stage is going to be handled on the car. We just need that interconnecting hose between the vac stat and the choke housing. So you can always reattend and nipple this up after the fact. I'd recommend doing this one up now. Point the Jubilee clip upwards. Just makes life significantly easier. Like I say, this is a driver carb. I'd go way more in depth with this. If this was going to be a showpiece on a restoration, obviously this thing would be looking brand new, but that's not what we're going for. Owner wants it to run so he can enjoy it. Last step, we need to loosen this shear headed bolt off. Okay, it is going, that's good. So this screw uses a crazy fine thread. Now, don't get angry at me. What I find tends to help massively with the adjustment of this, if it's been faffed with, take a nut. Because this runs such a fine thread, if you take a nut with a conventional thread on, you can just jam the thread enough that you can adjust the cold start speed. All right, so wind him into laser eyeball says about there. That might be a skosh on the high side, but then you just undo it, look. And then if you want to tweak it down a bit, you just back that off with a set of pliers. We are done. We're ready to go back on the car. I can see myself adjusting that choke, but we're going to leave it alone as it is. Let's just let it run on its own merits for now. We'll see. I'll see you back at the car. Okay, we've got our Pierburg installed. Now, you're obviously not going to be able to see in high detail where I'm at. So just before we get started, to adjust the wax stat, remember, you need to do that while the wax stat's doing its thing. You need a 4mm Allen key for that. Idle mixture screw, skinny little flathead, and he goes down into our idle mixture tower. And obviously our Phillips is for adjusting the choke housing. Now, I'm going to talk you through what's going to happen if you just need to know what things do and what way you turn them. So, starting with the choke housing, Phillips, you undo the 3 locking screws to lean off the mixture, opening the choke when you first start the engine. You want to turn it anti-clockwise. Now you're going to be looking at it from that side of the car. It's on that side of the carburetor. If you're using a 2E2 that's got the carburetor facing that way. Some 2E2s face the other way around. Certain models of Polo, smaller displacement Golfs. What I'm saying is, look at the choke housing. To lean it off, you turn it anti-clockwise. To enrich, you turn it clockwise. And the choke housing will close or open respectively. Closing the choke enriches, opening the choke leans off. I hope that's apparent, but some people might not know, so I'm just making that obvious. Okay, that's the choke. Once you've done your fast idle, which is your 2000 RPM, that adjustment's made at the throttle plate that we spoke about earlier. You don't actually need to panic about that being cock on right now because you can adjust it when the engine's hot. Now what you do on that situation is you unplug the bottom vacuum hose from the 3-point unit. The engine will shoot up in idle speed, and then you can just grab hold of that piece of thread, which used to have a head on it, but they break it off at the factory, and you wind it in clockwise to speed it up. It pushes against the 3-point unit and opens the throttle plate. You wind it back to lower it. You're aiming for 3000 RPM when the engine's hot. When it's cold, because of windage and thick oil and other such some like things like the engine's running cold, you'll see probably about 2000 RPM. It should be 2000 RPM. Don't panic if it's a couple of 100 RPM different. It really doesn't matter. Your wax stat, so you crack that bolt off. You want to close the throttle to slow it down or open the throttle to speed it up. You just need to crack it loose so that you can move the throttle independent of the linkage for the wax stat. And again, anti-clockwise as you're looking at it, so you'll be looking at the throttle from the other side. Anti-clockwise slows the speed down, clockwise speeds it up. You only have ever such a slight range of movement, but it is astonishing the difference it makes. You can ying one of these all the way from about 800 RPM right through to nearly 2000. That's that. I'm explaining all this now because this is going to go pretty quick and you'll see how quick it goes. Please don't panic. If you can't get it right first time, let it cool down, take another crack at it. You can do it, I promise. I'm as dumb as a bag of rocks and I figured this stuff out to the point that I specialise in them now. So if I can suss it out, you definitely can. Idle mixture, very simple, that's the bingle at the top. Pierburgs are weird. If you look down the idle tower, the screw you're turning is actually opening a slot and allowing more air in. So, hopefully you can draw your own conclusion from that, but if you can't, winding the screw in enriches the mixture because it supplies less air. Winding the screw out, anti-clockwise, leans it off. They're one of the only carburetors built that operates that way. This is going to go real quick. This old girl's been sitting while I've been doing some very fun work on this that I wasn't expecting to do, and I can't wait for this car to go, and this should be the last step. Let's set up our Pierburg. Like I say, this is all going to go quite quick. Just watch and I'll commentate as best I can. I'm going to apologise in advance if my hoodie rides up and shows you my butt crack. I'm doing my best with the situation. I don't know what's going on. It's like it's shrunk or something. I know exactly what's going on. I've put on probably half a stone since I filmed the first half of this video, but there we go. Little golf. We're done at this point, okay? Cooperate now and we're done. You don't like me. I'm getting to not like you. Let's work together just for one last hurrah, okay? This engine is astonishingly tappety from cold. Apologies, but that's just how it is. Be ready, have your tools ready. Phillips, Allen. Here we go. Just realised it's quite warm in here, so we've got no 2000 RPM. I don't see a problem with that if you don't. Right, listen. You hear that? Thud, 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 thud. That's the choke. You're definitely going to be looking straight down the crack of my arse if I do that on camera, so let me just fix that a second. There she goes. You don't need to make huge movements. I'm going to go a little further, I think. It's already clearing a bit. Yeah, literally, just the slightest of tweaks. Your mileage is literally going to vary because I don't know how out your choke is. Sometimes I've had to turn these like a third of a turn before it makes an appreciable difference. Okay, we're smoother. I would argue we're probably idling a little on the fast side. Yeah, we're looking at 1400, which is acceptable. As long as it comes down to the correct idle speed, that's acceptable. Knowing the temperature in here, it should be more like 1200, so we've got to move quickly, all right? Pop this Allen bolt loose. Ease the throttle closed. You hear that? Right, so I've just turned it anti-clockwise, closing the throttle. Now what you're going to want to do, ask me how I know, is rest your thumb on the throttle plate and resist as you tighten this bolt back up. Because otherwise what you're going to do is redline the engine and potentially get your Allen key stuck and piss off your neighbours. Oh, she's bogging. The engine should rev fairly freely from cold. Don't go caning it, obviously, but you know what I'm saying. Let's open her up a bit. How's that? There you go. Obviously, you don't get in a freezing cold engine and stamp on the throttle, so roll into it. Check it's not bogging out. There we go, happy. We should have a fast-ish idle, probably about 1200 RPM at this point. Perfect. We're idling at 1100 RPM. Engine's fairly sweet. I'm detecting a little bit of grouchiness. I think the engine's still running just a skosh rich, maybe. You hear the click? That's our over-on cut-off solenoid. There it is. That's all working happy days. It's a bit of a pisser that the TTV hasn't activated, but I'll see if I can get some footage of that working before it goes. All right, I think we're in danger. Not generally. I think we're in danger of our idle speed being a little low. You can confirm this. Sorry, I made a bit of a cock up. You need a 13mm socket. You just want to shine your torch down between the throttle plate and the 3-point unit. Let me show you what I mean. See how there's a gap there? Which means our idle's still coming down, but we're already getting down to our hot idle speed. That will make a difference. We're going to let her eat and see where it gets to. But as you can see, look, it's already a bit choppy. The general So we got some adjustments to make at the idle mixture side of things. I'll show you. I'm smelling rich mixture. I'm going anti-clockwise right now. All right, our stop screws hit the stop, which is good. You hear the subtle change in engine speed? You go too far, you'll get like a bump, 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 bump. I call that a lean sputter. There's probably another name for it. Okay, what's our idle speed? Idle speed's a little on the low side, so let's bring that up a little. Clear its lungs, it's been idling for a while. Just want to let those plugs get nice and hot, let them clean themselves off. Okay, much happier. I'd argue still a little on the slow side. Let's see if there's anything to be done with our mixture. Okay, there's a lot of ear work required in this. I'm telling you, that's idling too slow. I don't even have to look at the rev counter. Now, elephant in the room. The spec on these engines is supposed to be 800 RPM plus or minus 50 RPM. I'm telling you, it's too loud in the cab. I like to set these at about 850 to 900 and then it quietens the cab down. It does actually generally improve emissions as well. Little leaner. Smooth. Now this isn't the nicest sounding engine. The 8 valve is a particularly odd sounding engine anyway. They don't like to rev. They will rev, but they'll make it known that they're not happy about it. Just is what it is. But, nice silky smooth idle. No pum pum, pum pum pum. When you flick the ignition off, there should be no running on. It should just turn straight off. And that's about all she wrote. You might need to make a couple of changes over the next few miles. Just keep a screwdriver handy, keep a 13mm socket or spanner handy. Be careful putting your hand down the back of the engine. The exhaust manifold sits very close to the inlet manifold. Please don't hurt yourself. I can't accept any responsibility for it, but on a human level, I just don't want you guys hurting yourself. That's about it. Let the engine settle in, go for a test drive. Fingers crossed, you should be very happy. Now, if I can get a bit gushy for a moment. These carburetors are the most appallingly misunderstood carburetors in existence. I don't think there's a single other carb. The Quadrajet is a close second, but it does have some dedicated fans. What Pierburg were trying to do with these carburetors deserves admiration. They were trying to keep hold of the performance aspect and also improve things for the environment, for emissions, drivability, the works. They were trying to make something that allowed people to be able to afford a newer car that didn't have K-Jet, because K-Jet made the cars more expensive than a carbureted version. K-Jet was still a miracle as far as making it affordable, but we still needed carbureted engines. The Pierburg 2E2 is a masterstroke of retro engineering. No computers, no chips, no nothing. There is a single sensor in a relay in the fuse box that keeps an eye on the coil and turns on or off, depending on the signal from the coil. Nothing fancy. Some guys and gals with pencils, papers, slide rulers, and very, very primitive computers designed a block of alloy that can go through every fueling condition required of it without thinking. And Danny Dickhead thinks that throwing a Weber on it because he can't work out how to adjust the wax stack. The Pierburg 2E2, when in good working order, will provide you with years and years of dedicated service. Reliable motoring, even power delivery, and decent fuel economy. When you think what Pierburg were trying to do back in the day, they needed a carburetor for all environments that would adapt to various emissions requirements, that would manage its own choke, that could increase or decrease its own idle depending on temperature. All conditions, out of something with no computer chips, some wax, some heat, some hot water. Call me romantic, I think that's quite amazing. I really hope that this video has helped illuminate some of the more obscure aspects of the 2E2. Before I did those first videos, there wasn't a busting lot of information available in video form. Since then, some people have picked up the baton. I'm very happy about that. There are some aspects of their videos where they explain things perfectly. You'll notice there are sections I haven't mentioned because I want you to do something for me. If you found this video generally helpful, obviously like, comment, subscribe, share and all that. YouTube used to be like a library for information. You got a piece from here and a piece from there, and it was extremely useful. I've done my time on the Pierburgs and I've moved on to other things. I still love them dearly. If there's anything you're unsure about in this video or that I haven't explained or I've left out, I want you to go and check out the other guys that have made videos since I made my first ones, because they're very, very good. There's some very interesting information in them and you can learn a lot. Don't ever take all of your information from one source, because there might be things that I haven't explained quite right that you might be misunderstanding right now. And then in one of those other videos, somebody might be explaining it exactly the same process, but they've worded it differently and all of a sudden it makes sense to you. I encourage you, please, do a bit more looking into it. They're fascinating things. You'll have a lot of fun. And I'm getting old. It'd be great for other folks to be able to manage these things if they're the other end of the country or whatever. I will travel. But obviously, if you're up in Dunbartonshire and there are people having trouble, now you can help them out. I've been actually really humbled over the years that people even use my video as reference material, or weirder, recommend the video to people. That's very, very strange. But as cool as all that is, I am but one person. I can only travel so far before it's not worth my time or it's not worth the cost to the customer. So if we can get other people doing this shit, aces. But you need to look around for any addendums. There's bits and bobs other people are going to mention that I've missed, or they might just explain it better than me. And either way, it's cool. It's very cool of them to do that. They've put that information out there for free on the internet. Look it up. Righto. Oh yeah, before I go, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I have a Patreon. I have a Discord server. I have stickers on Shopify. Have I forgotten anything else? Oh, I do channel memberships and super thanks as well. Chuck some money in the hat if you want. If you don't worry about it. All good. Enjoy your Pierburg. Get your ass off the computer and go and get your golf started. I'll see you later. Thanks for watching SkyRocket.